Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob. I'm a Foodafan on Instagram and on Twitter, and have a blog at foodafan.com.
Hello, my name is Khuê, and you can find me on Instagram at midaicat.
Hi, I'm Alesa. I'm Inky Rocks on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, and this is episode 48. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is a especially early episode. We did a recording last week, so as everybody knows, our recording schedule is usually every 2 weeks. But with the new year, we thought we'd get together. We did this also last year. We took a look back at 2020 last year. So this year we're going to take a look back at 2021. I'm going to see what were the trends last year, and also maybe comment a little bit about our predictions from last year.
Yes.
Some were on and some were wildly off.
Wildly off.
And then we're going to try to make some predictions again this year.
Yes.
So, without further ado, let's look a bit at last year's predictions, because I think we made several predictions at the end of last year's recording. I just have some right here on the show notes. So last year, at the very end of the episode, we had all agreed that Drillog, right,
Yes,
was the breakout brand. They kind of debuted a few weeks before the Tokyo International Pen Show. And then it was really at the Tokyo International Pen Show that they had their full lineup. They didn't even have their Twitter yet, but we kind of thought that they would become the next thing, just based on how cool they were, how cool they looked. We had a bit of issue with their pricing, but we thought that, given the kind of engineering that they put into it, this would be a big thing. Now, Jacob, I remember you had a lot to say about Drillog. You made posts about Drillog. You actually were in contact with the folks at Drillog.
Yeah.
How do you think this prediction came to pass?
Yeah, so first of all, I think Alesa and I were the first ones to talk about Drillog. So Alesa did the very first video, I believe, about Drillog, and I did the first review, and we talked about it on the podcast. Thinking back, I think Drillog is one of those products that demo well. There are certain technology products that demo very well. Like you can have like a video game that has this amazing graphics on the screen, but once you start playing it, it doesn't have very good gameplay.
Like Cyberpunk.
Possibly, yes. Or, it can be some like AI personal assistant that follows a scripted sequence in a keynote perfectly well. But once you ask it for your local dentist, it doesn't know how to find it, right? That sort of products that demo well but don't actually work as well as you had hoped when you actually use it yourself. I think Drillog is a little bit like that. It's not that it's a bad product, it's just that once I used it, it wasn't quite what I thought it would be when I first tried it at Tips.
Was there any thoughts from you?
I think mine might be a little bit different in that I like the way it works and everything, but I think, with the price, who it's going to appeal to, I think, is like people who like nice watches and kind of, for a lack of a better word, manly stuff. It's a little more manly than, say, a glass pen. And I think that's who it's appealing to, someone who's got the, disposable income to pay the higher price and wants the sleeker, more technologically forward glass pen. But then, talking to Jacob here, this Mooman glass pen pretty much performs the same at a much cheaper price, but you're not going to get, that kind of, nice watch kind of feel.
Yeah.
Just one more thing I would add, and maybe this is sort of jumping ahead a bit, but right now I think Drillog's biggest problem is Kakimori, and I think we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, I think Drillog had several key issues. The first is that their product doesn't work as well as it advertised. And as you said, the first time you use it, it works, but then to get it to consistently work is a challenge. And second, we talked about the price already. Thirdly, it's a very awkward size, right? It's either too small or it's too large, and most of the pens, the handles were too small to actually hold comfortably, especially since they also had the twists and the turns, and those aren't super comfortable shapes to hold to begin with. So and the last thing I think is that Drillog only works in their Drillog system. And yeah, instead of Drillog, we had a competitor that came out with a very similar product, Kakimori. The nib looks less cool, but it works in your existing dip pens.
Yes.
It works in a bunch of different systems. And most importantly, it functions largely as advertised. I know that there are some batches where they had some problems, but I think the vast majority of those nibs out there are functioning the way that we would have wanted Drillog to function.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one big advantage is, of course, the price. I mean, you can't overlook the fact that the Kakimori is like 1/4 of the price or something like that.
I think it's like 1/10 of the price.
If you look at both nib and barrel, yeah. But the other thing is, I think at least some of us who buy these dip pens, we use them to test inks, and we want to test inks, we want to see both thin and broad strokes. And one of the things that the Kakimori gives you is this line variation. You can do these super broad strokes just to see how the ink shades, and then you just do some thin strokes to write down the ink.
Yeah. Another prediction that, Alesa, you made is that there's going to be death to shimmer. You said that shimmer inks are on their way out. And I think I said that I didn't think it would be as prominent for the rest of the world, but I think the shimmer trend has just started in Japan. So looking back at your prediction, would you say that came true, or do you think...
Well, I'm a little bit confused because I've been reviewing my video from last year, and like finding my things that I did wrong from last year. But so I said on the podcast that shimmer is on the way out. I think what I said on the video was basically that for glass pens, anything goes, and I think that's true. I mean, we've got shimmer ink with glue in it, and I brought one where you put the shimmer on top of the ink on the paper, but not actually in the pen. So yeah, I think for glass pens, shimmer did get crazier. And I had predicted that for fountain pens, it would calm down a little bit. And I think in Japan it might have calmed down, but I mean, Golden Barrel kind of went ballistic with everybody this past year, and seemed maybe because in the States shimmer isn't as big. I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge. So I gave myself a not right, not wrong, partial on that one.
But when you see people showing off this Pelican ink that you're talking about on Instagram, especially in Japan, they're all using glass pens and not fountain pens.
That's true.
I do think that in Japan there's always been a bit of a hesitancy to use shimmer inks in fountain pens. Absolutely. I think, though, if we consider what Tsutaya is carrying, so they're carrying the shimmer from Ferris Wheel Press. They have a bunch of dominant industry now, which we'll talk about later as well. I think we're going to have to really dig into, okay, what are the stuff that's being used for the glass pen crowd, and what are the things that are being used for the fountain pen crowd? I will say, though, that head honcho of Wagner, Mori, is now more and more buying into the shimmer idea, because also his apprentice Lichtop is associated with Tono Limbs. I think we're going to see him, or we have been seeing him, trying to change that perception, whereas he used to be the one who said, no, shimmer inks are bad, they're going to clog your pens, they're going to ruin your feeds. Whereas now he's like, oh yeah, actually shimmer inks are okay in these pens that I sell.
Yes, that's the big asterisk, right? First it was only these eyedropper pens that he sold, like the fine writing ones, and I think the Opus ones. And now he started selling Otto Hutt, I believe. And so now he has discovered that actually you can use shimmering inks in Otto Hutt pens as well.
Yeah, so we'll see where that goes next year. But I think overall, shimmer is around. we'll see how it evolves or how it continues to evolve in the Japanese market this year as well.
Like we could say that when we went to the Tomo and Limbs event last 2 weeks ago, last week, I don't remember anymore. You see that all the new Tomo and Limbs line with the glass pen maker, like most of them had shimmer inside, and if not one color shimmer, now the new trend is like 2 or 3 mix of color shimmer. It's like same as the Sailor Pro Gear shimmering pen. Like the more shimmering colors you have, the more fun it is. So I guess we could have shimmering inks around for at least 1 or 2 years.
I think one of the trends that we did pick up on and that we did predict accurately is having more of those color shifting, chromo shading inks. We can see that with just very recently the Yurameku inks from Sailor that show off these properties. Now, I know, Jacob, you found some good ones. For me, the papers that I used, or the inks that I used, kind of looked to me a bit like industrial wastewater. But, I can't deny that they do change their color based on when they dry and also the different types of paper that you use as well. So I think that's definitely a trend that we got right.
Yeah, and I think the paper part there is important because that seems to be part of the appeal, that depending on which paper you use, you get different behaviors. And this Takasago premium bank paper, as we talked about before, always seems to show off inks very differently than most other papers.
Which is interesting because if you use some of the older inks, like let's say a Konpeki or something from like a Diamine Majestic Blue or something, they show quite similar in most papers. I almost feel like the color will look different depending on the paper that you use is almost a defect to me, because I might not be using the same paper as the person who's swatching it. And as everybody knows, if you go into the shop and try to use their tester papers, it's always some random bad paper. So I like the chroma shading trend. I don't like the trend of it's going to look different depending on the paper that you use, for me personally.
One more thing about these chroma shading inks. I had expected retailers maybe in Japan or in the West to start carrying Fanyantan. That seemingly hasn't happened, and I'm a bit surprised about that, because you see a lot of these influencers, even in Japan, like people like Moe, who seems to be generally hesitant to buy things from overseas. She goes out of her way to order these inks from AliExpress or eBay because they are so interesting. So I don't actually understand why retailers haven't picked up this brand.
Very few retailers pick up mainland Chinese brands, though, because I think there's a very difficult. It's hard to communicate with them, because most of the time they don't have like a representative, right? It's they're kind of faceless in that way. But yeah, I think that's interesting. So the next thing that we discussed was the Sailor 110th pen, and we all had different hopes. I wanted different nibs. I think, Alesa, you said different nibs as well. Khuê, you just said more sparkles. And Jacob, you said like some Realo King of Pen with a Cobra nib. But then you said your realistic expectation was some bamboo pen with a Pro Gear nib.
Which is not that far away.
Yes, which I think it is. It's the closest one of all of our predictions. But they didn't do different nibs. In fact, the selection of nibs seems to even be reduced. And if we look at what's happened the last year, they've not really put out anything interesting on the writing end of the pen, except for the reintroduction of the King of Pen Naginata on their Ebonite King of Pens, which now you can get even if it's not a limited or a special edition King of Pen, which used to be the case, right? So at least there's that, but Sailor 1/10, I think, Jacob, you were very, very close. I think you got 70% of the way there. In terms of events, we predicted that all the events will still go forward, and that they're going to hold these shows regardless of the pandemic. But we did not have Inking Kink last year. We did not have Statameru Kai last year. And some of the events were postponed, especially the smaller events. But I think overall, 80% of these events did go forward, right?
Yeah, one event that I was hoping for but didn't happen was Kamihaku, right? That didn't happen. But there were also some new events this year that hadn't happened before, right? So Maruzen's new autumn one, and then there was this writing tools market in Kyoto, for example.
Yeah.
Kamihaku got only online, like the Tegamisha event too, And today, I think today at 12, they are doing their online New Year market.
Yeah. So I think generally Japan has controlled it okay, not the best. Especially the months leading to the Olympics were very bad. But the vaccination status of Japan is quite good. So that's definitely contributed to lowering the cases. Although with Omicron, we're seeing a rise of cases now. I think still we'll have all the events go on next year as well, similar to this year.
Yeah, we still won't have Ink this month apparently. I asked Itoya a few weeks ago and they said, as far as we know, there's nothing.
Mm-hmm. All right. The next thing that we discussed was the Platinum Limited Edition. Now, I made a wild prediction that didn't come true. I said that they were going to, or I hoped that they were going to move away from the overly funky designs that we saw on the Shi-un. I was wrong. They went even further down the deep end and came out with this swirly engraved model. So you said that the reason why the Shi-un wasn't selling as well was not because of the shape, but because of the price. Now, the Kinshu was $40 to $50 more expensive than the Shi-un last year. And we still see both of them in stores now, even though Maruzen had tried to tell me that the Kinshu was really, really popular and they got tons of pre-orders. We still see that it's nowhere near the levels of Kampu, is nowhere near the levels of Rokka, which again, especially for the Shi-un, surprises me because it's purple. But what do you think about this?
I think absolutely still it's the price. Even though the Shi-un was purple, it didn't sell as well. And, the fact that the Rokka and the Kumpo sold really well tells me that people do want that kind of thing. But, there's just, the pandemic's here and people, lost jobs and, the price is a factor. And that's probably the biggest complaint I get all the time. I think when you report stuff, people think it's because you did it. And people complain to me all the time about the rising prices of fountain pens. And I think that's what kept both those not selling as well.
Do you think somebody in Platinum, looked at the Shi-un, looked at the sales of the Shi-un and went, hey, we actually messed up on prices? Because they increased the price for Kinshu.
Yeah, and the jump between the Kumpo and the Shi-un was huge. It was like $100 or something. Right. Yeah, it was really a lot. So it wasn't like this creep. It was like bing, all of a sudden it was a lot more expensive. So I think that hurt them. But I don't know, did they make more of the Shi-un and the Kinshu? I
think they made a little bit more than the Kampu, but I don't think they made that much more versus the Rokka.
Yeah. Maybe so. I don't know, but I just don't know if that's, since I don't actually know the numbers or stuff, I don't know. Right. But my guess is that it's a price because that's the most common complaint I get.
Yeah. So we'll see if these pens are still around next year. And yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll do some digging around to see, why these pens haven't sold versus the older ones.
But have they released anything since then?
Unless you count the Wagner one, they haven't, right? At least not 3776s. Actually, that was something I was struggling with when I wrote my year-end blog post. I couldn't really find much to say about platinum.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't done anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But about the kinship price, I think the elephant in the room here is the gold price, which actually has gone up very significantly this year. So I'm sure their own costs have gone up dramatically, and they have increased prices even on the baseline. I mean, I think you talked about the core nibs going up like starting at 16,000 yen or something like that now, right? And obviously the kinship has the more elaborate design as we're talking about, so that probably adds to the cost. So, if I was running a fountain pen company and I thought that one of my competitive advantages was in-house gold nibs, I would be very worried about gold prices going forward, and I would be thinking about what I could do to perhaps use alternatives. And I think that's going to be a big headache for platinum, maybe even more so for Sailor, because they have less interesting lineup on the low end. But I think that's going to be a problem for all of these fountain pen makers.
Other trends we saw, we said that last year was going to be the year of the paper. I think in parts that's come true. We've seen some new paper. We've seen, personally, I like the B7 Tranex. We saw Aerofill. We saw the Per Penep, which is a terrible name. And we also saw the development of the new Sanzen Tomoe River successor. Interestingly, I think MD didn't release a standard line of new papers. I think they released some special editions, but they didn't release a standard line of new papers. Although MD's lineup is already very strong.
They did have this 70th anniversary.
Yes.
There were some like memo pads or whatever it was.
Well, I went there, and it's actually a collection of their existing papers.
Yeah.
And they were all quite fountain pen friendly. I really liked that. My personal hope was that I wanted fountain pen friendly washi paper, which does exist, but is not common. So I'm still on the hunt for that.
Yeah, I think, again, maybe we're jumping ahead, but I think the Tomoe River drama was one of the biggest stories of this year with a happy ending. So we'll get back to that.
But you're the paper guy of all of us here, Jacob. You've tested like hundreds of thousands of different specimens of paper in like different sizes. So what do you think about your prediction? Because this was your prediction.
Well, I think it has been the year of the paper, mostly because of Tomoe River, because people thought that the paper was going away. They forced themselves to try various alternatives, which actually I think has been a positive thing. You have seen reviews and discussions about all kinds of paper alternatives, and that's what I enjoy talking about, all the various kinds of papers that you don't normally talk that much about. So you mentioned B7 Tranex, this B7 Bulky, Cosmo Air Light has been a big favorite this year, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was very fun to test. We did this test last summer, and I'm still sorry I haven't posted all the results, like my result, but it was nice to discover lots of different paper that you have like a stack of notebooks, you never open them, and then you're like, okay, why not trying some fountain pen inside? And Tsubame, for example, it was nice to come back to them because I have so many of them. And I guess we're still going on in this direction for this year. Maybe we will have some washi with golden leaf fountain pen friendly paper.
We'll see. So what about you? Have you been testing paper in the last year?
Oh, I'm just going to go stick my neck out. This past year was the year of the paper, and this coming year will be another year of the paper, and it won't go away. I think the Tomoe River controversy is kind of leavening, and it's just causing people to try different kinds of paper and people to produce different kinds of paper. And we're going to see a lot more in the paper front.
Like Traveler Notebooks released 2 series of limited edition notebooks. The one, the B-side one, who has a different accordion foldings, washable paper, like the one who can go in the laundry machine, stuff like that. And they did this 10 years Traveler Factory anniversary, 10 edition, and you have one with golden leaves, for example, one neon papers. They are not all fountain pen friendly, but you can play with them.
Yeah. And the last thing we wanted to happen was that we said it would be the year where Taiwanese stationery really comes out onto the market. I don't think that actually came true. I think that the Taiwanese have continued to do interesting stationery products, but I don't think they've kind of come out onto the market as strongly as maybe they could have with all their creativity. So it's still very much within the Pinkoi purchasing sphere, but not really jumping out.
But I would say there's been a breakout year for one brand that we didn't even talk about last time, which is Mr. Cypress.
That's true. You want to talk a little bit about that? You have some Mr. Cypress pens.
Yeah, exactly. I have one incoming, a bamboo pen incoming actually. It's somewhere in Kotoku right now. Yeah, they made this, they have a few like base models, and then they do this elaborate bamboo, wooden, urushi, now more recent metal designs. And they're all absolutely beautiful. And I think they are fairly aggressively priced given how much how work goes into these pens. And you've seen a lot of influencers showing off their Mr. Cypress pens. The Pen Addict, he was reviewing a Mr. Cypress pen. They have had a good year, I think.
Yeah, and also I do want to point out their work is very precise with their rod end work. I think one of the most interesting things that they do is they take custom requests for rod end work. So I saw pictures of somebody who had his dog rod end onto a pen, and the detail was stunning. I mean, they use a laser cutter, but still, I think, with that level of detail, it's incredible.
And that's something Hiroko would never do, not because she necessarily can't, but because she just doesn't want to.
Yeah, and also Hiroko doesn't have the kind of machinery to do this like cutting thing as well. And motifs are always very, very difficult. So with what Mr. Cypress does at such an affordable price too, right? Yeah. I mean, the prices are incredible. So yeah, I definitely agree that Mr. Cypress broke out in a huge way.
Yeah.
Some of the other trends, I took some of these from your blog, Jacob. You want to talk a little bit about Pilot?
Yeah, I think Pilot had a very good year. There's always been this complaint that even though Pilot has a wide variety of models, there's this, 10,000 to 30,000 yen or like $100 to $300 price range where it's mostly black and gold, especially if you want interesting nibs, it's mostly black and gold. People have been asking for like a custom model or in some cases a capless model with more interesting colors. And that's what I think Pilot delivered this year with these two SE models, which we covered in the previous podcast. And also one of the big news stories this year was that after, a decade, they finally refreshed the Iroshizuku ink lineup, which was a big surprise to everyone. The new ink seems to be well received, at least in Japan. I've seen a lot of videos where people are praising the new inks. And then, of course, this is more Japan specific, but their limited editions this year have been absolutely fantastic. I mean, we covered the Marathon Spring event when they had that Tsuya Midori Urushi pen that sold out very fast. They had that Usagia capless pen with this glass flakes glitter. It sold out very fast. They had the Tokyo Renga Marazen pen. And then, of course, the one that we've been talking about for the last few weeks is the capless bamboo forest, which is only sold like every year, or at least for the last 3 years, maybe longer. Pilot does a limited edition capless, and it's only sold at brick and mortar retailers that have like Pilot trained or Pilot authorized sales staff, which means Marazen and Itoya, maybe Nagasawa and a few more. And they were selling this bamboo forest starting like December 19th, and it's mostly sold out everywhere now. And it's all over Instagram already. People are going nuts about the bamboo forest.
And also, not to mention, they also have the 2 Hachimonjia special Desmo pens. They had the SE in capless as well, which I think is one of the better caplasses that they did.
Yeah.
Remember, I did not like the SE material when it came on the 91, but the SE on the capless I think really works. Because the capless is, I mean, come on, it's a funky pen, and then having a funky material on it, I just feel like that works really well, and you know, I think really the SE material is almost made for the capless. So I agree. We've not seen Pilot come out so strongly, even in their 100th year anniversary.
That's true.
On these releases. So it's almost like this is what the Pilot fans wanted for their 100th year anniversary, and finally, as you said on the blog, it seems like they're almost waking up a bit to the trends, and I still think this is not enough. It's a step in the right direction, but hopefully we'll get more of that next year as well.
One thing I'm hoping for in particular is that, you know, they had this new brand in Japan called Ilmili, which is this.
Yeah.
Like right now, there are no fountain pens there, but you go to these retail stores and have this Ilmili ballpoints and notebooks, and all very colorful, all very pretty. I'm hoping that they will introduce fountain pens and inks under that Ilmili brand, because that can't be black and gold. You can't have an Ilmili black and gold pen.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised I haven't seen more Ilmili, because I feel like they had a big splash last year at Bungadoshi, and I hadn't really heard much news about them since. But if you look at Pilot's Instagram, they're actually pushing quite a lot of creators' work using their fountain pens and inks. So Betchery did something for them. They had just a post this morning. Their New Year post was by this, I guess, lady Maria Jose, and I really think that we can see more of fountain pen oriented stuff, because if you just look at their Instagram, their last 9 posts, 5 of them were fountain pen posts. So given the size of Pilot, given the diversity of things that they do, I think this is very encouraging that they're kind of leaning into their fountain pen heritage. All right. Next thing, Khuê, you want to talk about this fukubukuro thing?
Yeah, so there's a tradition in Japan for the first days of the new year, where you go in most of the mall, starting from tomorrow, because today is a holiday, and you got this surprise bag, so the fukubukuro, where you pay a certain amount, like 5,000 yen, 100,000 yen, 200,000 yen, and you don't know what's in the bag, but the value is more than what you pay for, because it's all the last year unsold, usually stationery stuff. So many stationery shop start to do it before the end of the year online. You can pre-book or pre-order. There was a limited amount, like for example, Yamamoto papers. One was about fountain pen papers only, and the other one was about notebooks. And the fountain pen one got sold out in less than 2 or 3 hours. They had a limited amount of these bags, and so it's quite popular. Like some people, I think, go up really early. I guess Apple Store used to have this fukubukuro
Yeah, those
box.
are super popular. People line up plus it's like overnight.
Yeah, I guess so. And many, like, it's quite a big tradition, and many shop, like, I saw Hashimonjia has some online you can order, and other like Pentonote or Nagasawa you have to go in shop. So are you going to get some tomorrow?
Well, the ones I would want are already sold out, but I think the modern take on this fukubukuro is that you know the main item in the bag, right? So that's the case with Yamamoto. There's also the case with Maruzen. Maruzen sold like 5 different ones. So for example, I think there's one for 100,000 yen. Like, you don't buy something for 100,000 yen and don't know what it is, right? So you know actually in that case that you're getting a platinum, I think 100th anniversary, like silver pen, which of course is actually worth 100,000 yen. And then you're getting a bunch of other stuff which you don't know what it is. So it's a good deal. I think those kind of Fukubukuro deals tend to be very popular.
Yeah. Has that been sold out yet?
It's sold out very fast.
So even, such an expensive Fukubukuro has strong appeal. And obviously the Fukubukuro idea, it's not new, right? It's a tradition in Japan.
Yeah, it's a tradition.
But yeah, maybe we'll see some inks, tonal limbs. Maybe we'll do it next year.
I think there are Okamotoya. They are doing something. I saw on their Instagram, and I thought it would be more ink, but it's more like pen and accessories, and then maybe 1 bottle of ink. So I was more like I would like a bag with like 20 inks inside to play with.
All right. Next thing, I think maybe we can safely say that Ink Numa is kind of dead.
No, not at all.
No. I mean the event.
Oh,
The
okay.
event.
I was thinking Ink Numa's dead. I mean, did you just get up?
No, so in previous years, we'd always have this huge Ink Numa event at around the end of summer, early fall. But this year, instead, it was at Shinjuku Odakyu. It was part of a greater stationary event. And from what I understand, it was actually much smaller and maybe a bit less interesting than the previous Ink Numa events where they had all these glass pens and these limited edition inks.
I don't think it was necessarily smaller. It was a pretty big venue, but the first thing you saw when you entered was like table after table with like washi tape and stuff, and you had to walk a bit to find the inks and the pens. I actually had a lot of fun at the Inkunuma and Deco event. They still had they didn't have quite as much of these like Gotoji ink that we talked about before, these regional exclusives, but they still had some very sought after inks, and you could see people just running toward the tables and they grabbed the last few bottles while people were standing there talking. People almost got into fight over the last few bottles of Bungo Joshi ink. And I enjoyed talking to Sakai Technical Paper. So that was a fun event. I would hope for more Gotoji inks next year, but even if they do the same thing this next year, I will still go, definitely.
It was a stationary show. That's what it was. And I think, the last 2 Inkunumas, they were the only 2. I mean, it's not like a long tradition of it. And I think they might have learned something this year, that when they did open the doors, people were like killing for those special inks. So I think they're going to be more ink heavy next year if they've learned anything from this year. But I think it was just an adjustment. And I think part of it is like, you had the Gotoji inks. Once you've gone to one Inkunuma and tried to get some of them, you're just going to go back and get the same ones. And I think maybe that's why they scaled it back. But it definitely wasn't an Inkunuma. It was a stationary show.
Yeah, it was
but
like
then
a
the inks
deco
were
show.
just hard to get, so I think that might maybe change.
Yeah, I think one interesting contrast between that event and the Tono Limbs event is that for the Inkunuma, people actually went there. I think a lot of people went there for the inks, and they were running for the inks, while at Tono Limbs, where they had so much ink, people did not go there for the inks. They went there for the glass pens.
Yeah, so we'll see how they play the format next year. But yeah, Bungo Joshi is not out of the fountain pen and inks game yet. But they might be readjusting how they do their formats. All right. Last thing that I wanted to talk about for the trends is the rise of dominant industry. Sorry, that's a I really wanted to say that.
No, you need to do an evil laugh after that.
All right, let me do that again. The rise of dominant industry. All right. So dominant industry is a Korean brand, and they make a bunch of inks. The first thing that, and I became aware of this brand maybe 4 or 5 months ago when they first got out into the market. They were doing a lot of paler, similar to Japanese inks, but with some shimmers. They had like some sheening inks as well. And they seemed very well behaved. At that time, I didn't think that they would be as huge as they are now.
But are they huge in Japan? Most of the coverage of dominant industries that I see has been in the West. I know, like Brad Dowdy did a review. He loved how well behaved it was, and it's a lot of you see them a lot on Instagram, but it's not so much in Japan.
Well,
They're starting in Japan.
When I went to Bungujoshi Haku, they actually sold out of several colors in and I was the first block of the first day. So it's definitely, I think, going to be a huge attraction, along with Ferris wheel press in Japan.
That's the big one.
The bottles, the shapes, they look like nail polish bottles, and the colors are very appealing, I think, to a Japanese market. So I think, Korean ink makers, I think Korea has really established itself as a strong ink making industry, with Tonal Limbs now, with Colorverse, now with Dominant Industry as well. Three Oyster, although they're a bit smaller. But I think they are, it's safe to say that the Korean market is really on top of this ink game.
Yeah, I think that's true, and they are. We talked about that before the show, but in general, I think they're much better than the Japanese brands about reaching out to like social media influencers and getting people to talk about them, right? And I think that has served them well.
Yeah, and I went to Ginza Tsutaya yesterday, 2 days ago, and you can see that they have a lot of these not small, but not as known Korean brand than Colorverse, for example. And we were talking with Alesa before that we think that the new game is not only the ink and the like shimmer or sheening, but the bottle size and the bottle shape. This is like, we will see more and more, I think, a lot of brand that already on the market, like Krishna, the Indian brand, or Kakimori this year. Most of them like redesign their glass bottle to make something like a collection object, like a miniature perfumes object, and it will start to get more and more. And I think people are looking for that. They don't want them just to be stackable and practical. They want them to be beautiful, and they want them to be a nice object on their desk.
I want them to be stackable and square. All right.
But just one more thing about that. I mean, we have talked so much about how popular Tonal Limbs are, and they are popular, and they have, and a big reason, as we talked about, is their ability to do these small runs, collaborating with everyone. But what they don't have is interesting ink bottles, right? So I wonder if now, when you see so much of Ferris wheel press in particular, but also about these Korean brands, if you're going to see Tonal Limbs stepping up their bottle game. They need to, yeah.
All right. So next we're going to get into kind of the review of our own year. I think I can speak for everybody when I say that the story of the year for everybody was the Sanzen Tomoe River. Mm-hmm. Well, first was the discontinuation of Tomoe River, and then the pickup by Sanzen.
And you guys broke that, right? I mean, it was basically your thing. I think that was the first.
I believe
the
so.
first I heard, yeah. So I mean, that's kudos to you guys. I mean, that's really important information, and you guys are on top of it.
I mean, mostly Jacob, to be honest. He actually went out and contacted all these folks involved. Jacob, what do you think? Do you think that has been the story of the year?
I think so, and I'm glad that it got a happy ending, but I've been so surprised about the sheer amount of misinformation about this whole story, even after we covered it multiple times. I've seen on major blogs and on like podcasts that people have completely got the wrong story. I'm really surprised about that. But so for other stories, I think there are a few more interesting stories this year. One is that Sailor or perhaps Plus opened a retail store. I think that's a very interesting strategy.
Yeah. Any other interesting stories that we want to talk about from this year?
Maybe all this physical event or fair must revise how they keep people waiting in line.
Oh, the Christmas party story.
Yeah. And
You're the one that got
and to learn for next year and the next year to find kind of simpler system on. Yeah, you said in the last episode.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if it's the story of the year or the scandal of the year. For me, the scandal of the year was, I mean, it must have been the Moonman Kaweco controversy, right?
Really? I would say it's Jovo cracked nibs.
Oh yeah, Joe cracked housing. That's also a big controversy.
and the Mont Blanc ingate.
Mont
Ooh,
Blanc
that's another
Ingate.
good one. Yes.
Yeah, those are pretty good ones. So, Alesa, any contenders from you for the scandal of the year?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's above the scandal. She's flying in the clouds.
A lot of them, though, I think I got asked about that a lot, and when I do research them, like this is what made you guys' like the Tomoa River paper thing legit. Is you actually went to the source, you got the real information. If you look up all the other ones, I mean, I was going to try to attempt them, but a lot of them were just people's opinions, and I think that got twisted around when you reported the facts. People kind of interpreted it with their own opinion.
Right.
And that was part of the whole thing. Is that it was really hard to find solid information on the, it was just people had their anecdotes or whatever. And like for instance, like the cracked housing, people had like 30 of them. They would talk, I have like 30 of them. And I mean, I searched through all of mine. I didn't have any. That doesn't mean it didn't happen or anything, but it was just really hard to trace down like the facts.
Yeah.
And then you guys had the facts, and so it was easy to kind of talk about it. But talking about these other controversies, they're people's opinions.
Yeah, that's true.
And that makes it harder to call it a controversy for me. So that's why I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'll listen to them, but I don't have really any opinions on them.
All right. Then we're going to go into the paper of the year, our personal best and worst. And I want to just go around the table. So maybe Jacob, you can start first. What was the best paper and the worst paper?
So do you mean like new releases this year?
No, just what you liked.
I recently picked up one of those Midori MD paper pads that I haven't used in a while, and I realized that how much I like that paper. It might be my overall favorite.
All right, and what about the worst?
I will refuse to answer that one.
All right, he defers.
Oh, I'm next.
You're next.
For me, since now it's the new successor, it's probably a tie between the successor and Takasago Premium, and I like that paper just because of the feel. It feels really good. The worst, hands down, for every year has been Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc paper, you have some?
No, I just tried it at the store in front of the salespeople, and it bleeds and feathers all over the place, and they look at you straight in the eye and go, "Yeah, it's great paper." So,
Yeah.
To be fair, that is not unique to Mont Blanc. So I mean, when we went to Pelican Hubs, everyone has had the same experience, I believe. Was when you get these notepads, that paper is terrible. And actually, if you go to like Marsden and you test paper, I think like a Sailor's paper pad is terrible.
It's
too.
terrible.
Like,
Oh, really?
How can this be?
I don't know. Isn't that funny? You'd think that they'd be detail oriented about
Yeah.
something like that.
Only the one who use the MD pad are good. You have this cream MD pad, and usually it's for stamping. They would put the MD pad, like traveler notebooks, because they use MD papers. They would put the MD pad so you can stamp their limited edition stamp. But I was like, yeah, but there's no fountain pen here to try, because this is the paper to try fountain pen.
Yeah, but some do have Tomoe River pads. I think those are pretty good, but yeah, I would agree. And your best and worst paper?
Best, I stay with MD and Tomoe River, of course. But the worst is still for me the 365 fountain pen pad. It's huge. It's a thick one. I think it's like 5 or 6 centimeters of paper pad, and it's the worst. It's like an onion skin, but it doesn't have the capacity of an onion skin to keep the ink on the page. It's just go through 3, 4, 6 page, and I don't know why. And it's for fountain pen.
Where do you get this at?
I think I got mine in Kingdom Note, if I'm not wrong. But it
I'm
was a long time
to
ago.
Try it now.
But I still have this. I can bring it to you. I still have it. So I use it. It's quite thin. So I use it to wrap. Like I make small envelope to wrap stickers and stuff like that, because I cannot write on it.
Yeah, I want to change my answer. I agree with Khuê. That is the worst paper.
And I remember why I bought it, because I love everyone who makes paper out there. Please make an A6 plain notebook so I can fit it in my Hobonichi cover. But I don't want grid, I don't want lines, I don't want anything, just a plain one. And it's why I bought this one, because it's in an A6 format. But it's the worst paper ever.
Yes.
My personal best paper, I'm not going to say Sanzen Tomoe River, although I thought it was pretty good, just because it's not out on the market yet. I don't think I can consider Tomoe River to be the best paper this year, also because, they switched to machine number 9, and most of machine number 9 paper was pretty rubbish. So I'll say, for me, one of Jacob's personal favorites, Grafilo. I've been using a Grafilo notebook. I like it quite a lot. It's very decent. Obviously, I still also have my Tomoe River notebooks. But yeah, I think Grafilo is pretty decent. It was a discovery of the year for me. A little bit expensive, but that's okay. I think the worst paper of the year for me was Iroful, aka Cosmo Air Light.
Yeah, it was Cosmo Air Light, yeah.
For me was absolutely not my favorite. Obviously, you can still write with fountain pens on it, so it's not as bad as yours. But of the ones that I bought, it's definitely not my favorite of all time.
I think it was funny we did this podcast episode when the first time you tried it and you said it was terrible, and like in the next sentence was, I'm going to do a giveaway of an Iroful paper.
Yeah, I mean, some people like Cosmo Air Light, so why not? All right. So the ink brand of the year, the best and the worst, and I want everybody to give a brand and an ink that they liked or did not like. So maybe we'll switch up the order. Maybe Khuê, you can go first.
Yeah, I'm curious on Khuê's answer.
My best ink of the year. Difficult.
Ink brand first. What's your favorite brand from the year? And then one ink.
So difficult.
I know that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a very tough one. I guess like the brand I bought the most this year was Tonon Lim. Yeah, I guess I have even...
Get her out of here.
And it started, I came back on my picture too to see what's happened. It started on the 8th of January when we went with Akane to Okamoto, yeah. And I thought I started the year with like buying 10 bottles of ink. And one of the color I really like was, you got it for me, Alesa, is the limited edition red. What's the name? It's one of the... Super Tea. Yeah, exactly. Superstar or something. And it's like a very rich dark red, wine red, and a lot of sheening inside. And it's one color that I came back quite often. And I have like hundreds of bottles. I don't remember so much. I don't even open them yet from 2021.
What about your worst ink brand?
I guess Mont Blanc was quite the deception last year because I used to have some of their limited edition. I like the shape, the small bottle, and to see that they have this Mont Blanc gate, and thanks to Fountain Pens mem who did all the research and the comparison, it was a bit bitter to see that this kind of big brand don't really care about what is a limited edition and just try to resell some of their colors in a new label and new name. Yeah, so big deception.
That was proof.
Yeah,
they admitted.
Yeah, they made it. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the item codes were the same.
The item codes are the same, and they answer. You can read on the Fountain Pens.
Did they apologize?
No,
they just say
what they said was, and maybe I'll just read out because we didn't actually cover Mont Blanc Gate, but Fountain Pen Memes, good friend of the podcast, actually, he did a bunch of comparisons people are submitting to him, but the first one was the James Dean Rebel Red and Mont Blanc Scarlet Red, which had the same chromatography, the same product number, and Mont Blanc said, well, he mentioned Mont Blanc, and then he messaged them in August. He said, it would be nice if you released a statement on this. And then Mont Blanc wrote, hi, as a matter of fact, you're absolutely correct in your assumption, albeit James Dean ink has been discontinued from the Mont Blanc assortment and has been replaced by C. Doyle ink / Scarlet Red. Creative Direction shares analogous inspirations for these editions, therefore it leads to the same type of hue for these two inks. We look forward to welcoming you to one of our boutiques or authorized retailers.
And they did it for 5 colors, and all the limited edition post 2018, right?
Well, actually, not just 5 colors, but the James Dean and Scarlet Red, actually there's a third ink, Conan Doyle Scarlet Red, as well as the new Zodiac Tiger Red ink. It's all the same ink.
Yeah.
Well, I had the James Dean and I didn't like it. I ended up dumping a bunch of black ink into it.
Yeah, but I think those are pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty big story there. I mean, if they fessed up to it, you know.
Yeah.
I think my best ink brand of the year, although I haven't bought too many, I think Dominant Industry is quite good. I tried some of their inks. It's very nice. It works very well. My personal favorite was the Sunset, which I think is one of their most popular. It's this pale purple ink with glitter. I really like that. My personal worst ink brand of the year, I think has to be Sailor. And my least favorite ink from Sailor this year, and this is probably one of the only reasons why they're on that list, is the Maruzen Hayashi Rice.
Oh, it's so terrible. I mean, it's not a nice color, but what's so bad about it?
It's just not a nice color. That's the only thing, yeah.
And it looks like Hayashi rice, though.
Looks like Hayashi rice. It's not what I want to write with.
Well, it says on the label Hayashi rice, so.
I'm hoping that next year's color will be nice.
Yeah, really.
I think it's quite blue, no?
Yeah, it's like a sky blue.
Yeah, sky blue. They put on the advertisement paper.
Yeah.
But just to mention that Dominant Industry, they said on their box it's dip pen friendly ink. So just that people don't start to mix. Like you can try, of course, you can put in your fountain pen, but they mention it's for dip pen.
So I believe the Pearl series is okay for fountain pens as well, but whatever series the hologram is not for your fountain pens.
But on most of their box they print ink for dip pen. So just to be sure that you try on a cheap pen or something, not to destroy your new expensive Christmas gift.
All right, Jacob.
Well, I'm not as much into inks as the two Inkunumas here, but my... okay. Yeah, I have some bottles here. My favorite brand was probably Tag because of how much they have improved.
That's interesting because you hated Tag.
I did, and I mentioned that multiple times on the podcast, like the early ones, like Geon in particular was this example of this so dry, like borderline unusable ink. Like they were pretty if you just use like a folded nib, but in a fountain pen it was hard to use, right? They have improved so much, and the most recent releases this year They have beautiful colors. One thing they always done very well is that they got this whole shading thing right. They're still fairly light, somewhat mute, but that gives you a very pretty shading. But now they're much more fountain pen friendly. It flows better in fountain pens. I particularly like these inks they did with Ginsat Staya. I can't even remember the name because they're so long. Edo something, Poppy something. I like those. As for worst, I'm not sure if there's anyone that's if worst is the right word, but most disappointing might still be Sailors. I would agree with you, see why. And what I'm having in mind specifically is this, this Minamo 10+3 series that we talked about, and was such a good idea.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was such a good idea, right? So I mean, if you ask yourself, how can a company like Sailor sell low-end pens that compete with the likes of Moonman and so on? Well, one way is to bundle them with inks and have like an Inkunuma kit. And they kind of did that. They bundled this Prophet Junior with 3 bottles of ink, but they were just rebottled Ink Studio inks, and it was like a plain red, plain blue, and plain green. It was like the
most boring one.
Yeah, I mean,
the one we never use.
The idea was so good, but execution was disappointing.
Yeah, but Sailor go back on track with their line of this one, the Yume.
Yurameku.
Yeah, they had recovered. I agree.
For me, they saved their year with this line because I was quite upset by their color of the Maruzen too, and the one for tips was nice, but already seen like this green shading to purplish color. You see them a lot in Sailor. And this line, at least they say, okay, let's play what those the people love, this 123, 162 from Studio line, and they really make this 9 color shade, like lot of shade, lot of changing color, and I think they, just get out from 2021 with the head out of the water.
Yeah. Elsa, your brand of the year, ink brand of the year?
I'm going to kind of semi-tie it here, but I kind of agree with Tag, and mainly because they seem pretty innovative in some pretty weird ways. They were the ones that came out with that natural ink, fountain pen ink a couple years ago with the caterpillar poop.
Yeah.
And then they did get better on their drier inks, and then they really have spearheaded the little teeny tiny bottles that you can get a set of, and then they did the glue glitter ink where it's got glue in it so that when you use the glitter ink it doesn't come off at all, but then you got to be, it's supposed to be with the glass pen, but you can put it in a fountain pen for about an hour and then you got to clean it out really good. And then they also have, they're just pushing the envelope on ink. They have one where it's the sticks and you use the ink stone. Yes. And you make your own colored inks with the ink stone, and that's just really pushing the boundaries there. So I really like that. As far as worst ink, it's probably going to be Noodler's.
Yeah, Noodler's up there for me as well. All right.
Yeah, I think Tag and Kakimori, put the bar really high in this aesthetic, and it's not only the product himself, not the ink, but all the packaging, the bottle, the catalog. Like their website, they knew how to, they knew how to, you pay for something is the whole experience. It's not just the product, and it's quite good.
And even the retail store is just absolutely beautiful. It's probably my favorite stationery store in Tokyo.
Yeah, Kakimori is,
Although speaking of Kakimori, I'm surprised you didn't talk about the evil ink.
But I like that one because it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's evil.
It's
you
perfect.
like it because it's bad.
Yeah. To test paper is the best.
All right. And the big one, pen brand of the year / pen of the year. First, I want to get your pen brand of the year, and then the pen of the year does not have to be from that brand. So this is your personal favorites. It's not a indication on the market. It's just what you like this year. Maybe also we'll go with you first.
No, I'm passing. Okay. I'm furiously.
Maybe I'll go first on this. I think for me the pen brand of the year for me personally, let me start with region. I somehow started this year with 0 Italian pens and end up with like 15. I've really been into the Italian brands, Aurora. I'm not into Visconti, but somehow I have 4 of them now. And I think the pen brand of the year for me has been Leonardo, personally, because I think last year they were still trying to experiment with, making pistons and all of that. They had a lot of cool materials, but none of them really were for me. None of them really spoke for me. Again, I want an ink window, or at least an ink view, and some kind of self-contained self-filler. This year, with the Momento Magico, I think they've solved a lot of those problems. First of all, the grip section in the previous Momento Zeros, it kind of dipped inwards. Jacob, you have one right there which dips inwards, which was kind of like a funky grip. The Momento Magico flares outwards, is more of a standard grip, which I really like. It has an ink window, and I've actually commissioned Leonardo to make me several pens, which should be coming sometime in the next year, I hope. I have today with me a Leonardo Momento Zero in the Omas Wild material, which is fantastic material. So for me, they've been the breakout, or at least my pen brand of the year. The pen of the year for me is probably my Mont Blanc 146 with the Rankaku finial that I did. I just really enjoy that pen. I think it has the perfect weight to it, similar to the fine writing Bronze Age ones, which are cap heavy. I really like how it's cap heavy. It's heavy towards the front, but then when you uncap it, it becomes a balanced pen. So that's what I really like. So for me, those are the best. In terms of the worst, I have to say again, Sailor. I think the 110th pens were too bulky, too huge. The pen the nib looks mismatched. It's obviously not a pen for writing because of the step down. And I think their take on that Ohashido design actually made it a bit worse because of how sharp that step down was. So when I held it in my hand, for me, it was no-go for me. Such a small nib with such boring nib options. And then later on in the year, they came out with these ebonite pens, which again, were too long. You could see clearly the machining marks on them. Again, with just very boring. They didn't even have their full lineup of their smaller Pro Gear full-size nibs. So I think outside of the store exclusives, which were exciting, they didn't really refresh a lineup, or they did refresh their lineup, but not to something that I enjoy.
So I would agree with you that Leonardo has been a very interesting brand this year. That brand wasn't really on my radar at all. Now I have 3 of them, and I agree that the new model, Momento Magico in particular, it's almost a flawless pen, right? It has everything you want. I was going to say that my favorite brand was Pilot for the reasons I explained on the blog and for what we talked about here, but then I thought about it and I changed my mind, and now I'm going to say Pen BBS, even though I haven't bought a single Pen BBS pen this year. It's only because of the nibs. I think one of the most interesting trends this year, I didn't talk about this on my blog because I focused on Japan trends, but the fact that Pen BBS rolled out all of these calligraphy nibs. I have bought so many of them and they're fantastic, and I love the fact that they actually did it. Obviously they're not the only ones doing it. Wingsong has done it, Hongdian and others have done it, but I think the ones I've tried from Pen BBS have been particularly good. And people have complained for the longest that if you buy a Chinese pen, all you really get is like a fine or medium nib or a fude. You don't get any interesting nibs, you don't get any broad nibs and so on. That is no longer an issue with these calligraphy nibs.
And I want to point out the interesting carved nibs that they've released
Yes.
as well, to huge fan frenzy. I bought 2.
Of course you did.
But yeah, I think they're really pushing the envelope as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. We haven't seen many pens from them recently, new pen models, but I'm hoping to see something soon. But the nibs alone makes it my favorite brand of the year. But my favorite pen, or my favorite purchase this year, was actually the Ohashido, because it has this wonderful large 14K soft nib with kind of funky engraving or stamp. It has that old ebonite scent / smell, and I like the fact that it's made in Sendai, a city that has very special meaning to me. And I like there's something whimsical about Ohashido. The fact that they don't have any models, or there's only one guy, right? He doesn't have any models. He just seems to make whatever pen he feels like making today. And there might never ever be another pen just like that one, right? That the whole whimsical thing about Ohashido, I think, there's something fun about that.
Yeah.
But as for my worst brand, I would have to say Platinum. Because, again, as we talked about before, but they didn't really do anything interesting this year. And I think they dropped the ball with the Curidas. I remember we talked about there were plans or rumors about opaque metal versions. Instead, all we're hearing is that they continue to have QC problems with the Curidas. And they don't seem to have done anything with it. Meanwhile, there's one of the Chinese brands make another Curidas clone for a fraction of the cost, which, as far as I understand, is actually better quality than the original. But yeah, I want to see more from Platinum.
Yeah, was the Curidas last year or this year?
I think it was released last year, but
Right, but they didn't do anything.
they didn't do anything this year.
When you mean last year?
I mean 2020.
20.
Oh yeah,
20. Yeah.
adjusting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean has been a disappointment, hasn't it? And it's mostly price increase, which is okay, but I feel like they've not done the product innovation along with it. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Alesa, your turn.
Okay. I'm going to go directly against UCY and consider Sailor my favorite brand, mainly because they have been able to charge higher prices without getting beat up like everybody else. Now you're shaking your head. Here's a prime example. I did a video about the SE, which you didn't like, and the Amaoto, which is just incredibly popular. They're the exact same price, but one's a Pro Gear Slim. And yet, everybody dumped on me about how Pilot, which is crazy for charging that much money, but Sailor got away with it. Sailor is selling their special editions for over $500. And, everybody's dumping on Platinum for charging what they did for the Shiyun or whatever. So they've been able to wiggle, because she's over there holding her pens. So they've been able to sidestep a lot of, I think, the heat, which I think is really, which maybe shows a real understanding of design or reading their audience well or whatever. But people don't seem to be complaining as much about their price increases as everybody else's, which I think that's a really good marketing. And my favorite pen would be, for this year, would be the Swipe. And mainly because it's affordable, it's fun, and sometimes we focus so much on all these expensive pens and all the special things they can do, and here's a pen that's, under $30, and it's got like 2 converters and springs, and, it looks weird, and you can throw it across the room, and it's fine. It's a good pen. So it's not exciting, but it's, I think, really worth the money, and I think that's really good for the market. And as far as least favorite, I don't have any least favorites. I like all pens, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Except Noodlers.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't think I bought a Noodlers in a little while, so I don't know.
All right, yeah, that's fair. And last but not least, Khuê.
So I will jump on what Alesa just said. I think Sailor, who is one of my favorite brand, of course, because they do all this shimmering Pro Gear and no Rialo. I haven't have any Rialo in 2020, and now I have 2 of them, thanks to CY. And one more thing I want to add is the same. If you guys talking about Leonardo now as your main thing, I think 2022 will be a Leonardo year, because you did the same with Plotter last year, and I have 4 of them now. I didn't have any Plotter before, and I'm like, oh no, why are they talking about another brand like I don't have yet? So yeah, Sailor Bungo Box was my brand this year, because I got their 2 limited edition who are fantastic, and I guess they are strong to do this kind of. They don't just sell the pen; they sell the whole atmosphere with them, and all this galaxy, supernova, glittering stuff. It sells very well, and yeah, I guess they were sold out very fast, both of them, compared to Chikura one, who's still available. So I think you need this kind of poetry or story around, and people like that. And for the best pen, which is not a shimmering one, I have 2 of them. So one is the...
I don't know if you can have 2 best
Yes, of course.
So one who is a very like special one is the Moonman Chubby Q1. Yeah. So I really enjoy this pen. I like the fact that I can I changed my nibs, and I could put one of the Pilot parallel nibs inside to play with and do calligraphy training with it, and it's a very fun pen. I like to customize it. I put a lot of stickers on it, and I change them, and yeah, it's and the only thing I hate is that Moonman changed their brand name to Madron, and I really like the Moonman name because it really looked like Sailor Moon, a magic pen or magic stick, and so this is my bad point.
Yeah, you got to complain to Kaweco.
Yeah, exactly. It's because of Kaweco. So bad, you guys, Kaweco, because now I cannot buy the other one, the wooden one. I really want the Moonman Q one on wood, but it's written Mahjong, and I don't want to buy the Mahjong one. And the second one is the limited edition of Pilot Ichinoki, who I got in secondhand, very good price, and it's a dream to ride with. And I like the wooden touch when I ride with it, and it's one of my favorite pen of 2021.
And your least favorite?
My least favorite. It's very difficult. I don't have a least favorite for. Yeah, I enjoy all my pen, I guess. I will come back maybe in 1 or 2 weeks if something pop up, but no, I don't have any.
I think you 2 are cop-outs. You don't have least favorites.
I have 2 favorites and no.
Name some. Like I said, maybe a Noodlers. I haven't owned a Noodlers in like
Well,
I don't know,
for
15
example,
years.
the MD.
I
pen.
didn't buy it. Yeah.
What MD?
I thought it was a pen
So
that you.
they had an MD. MD
Yeah.
released a pen with some I think Bulgarian or Romanian manufacturer, and they had the nib that curved down that they were saying was supposed to be extra smooth, but it's just some random OEM pen. I think that was. No,
Yeah, the
pretty
pen
good.
was
I've
not, but
never
we
tried it.
didn't try it. Yeah, I didn't try it. And I saw that Ferris wheel really is kind of line who looks like between the Pilot Kakuno and the Kaweco one, like this kind of pastel color plastic fountain pen. But I haven't tried, so I cannot judge.
All right. Fine. That's fine.
So just one thing to add to what Khuê said about Mahjong and Moonman, and much preferring the Moonman name, and I agree, but for slightly different reasons. So the Moonman logo with that typography to me looked just like Moomin, and I like that.
Yes, exactly.
Moomin Papa.
And Movin is from your neighbor Finland, isn't it?
Exactly.
But she wrote in Swedish, Tove, because she's from a Swedish area in Finland.
Right. Anyways, so that's been our look back on 2021. Now, predicting 2022, I just want us to have maybe one prediction each. For me, I think there's a trend towards smaller ink bottle sizes, so I think we'll have more brands and companies that come out with smaller ink bottles. So that's my prediction of the year. Jacob?
So we've talked about how we expect the glass pens to be more popular in the West, and we talked in the last episode about why that hasn't really happened because of availability. All of it might still happen, but I think with the drill log and with the Kakimori, we've seen that it's not really about glass pens. It's about having dip pens you can use to test and play with your inks, right? And I think I would expect to see more companies trying to do these kind of metal dip pens. And what I have in mind in particular is, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Sean Design, who has all the tools and the skills to make machine things to make a metal nib.
I'll text him after the show.
Oh man, I would just be really floored if that happened. That would be cool.
So your prediction for 2022?
Well, there's just about 80 million, but I agree with the smaller bottles. It's happening now, and it's going to continue happening.
All right, and Khuê, your prediction for 2022?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said, especially for the, like we said, it's not the glass nib who is important. It's like finding a way to test ink or to play with ink that is easily like in quotes washable, because some are really difficult, the brass one, depending on the ink you try. And we talked that all this AliExpress special nib that you can, like special small pen that you can bring everywhere with you that has a cap. And I think this is the new trend, because the glass pen itself is a beautiful object you keep on your desk, you keep in your drawer, but you don't bring it everywhere with you because it's fragile, of course. But what Kakimori made it strong is like you can interchange these nibs, the glass, the two brass colors one, in any vintage holder you have. And the difference with any traditional dip pen, where you need to know how to write in calligraphy, because there is kind of flex or the one Betchory use, the
brass ornamental.
Yeah, exactly, the lettering one. You need to write in a certain way to use them, because if not, you mess with them. This is the difference with this brass metal nibs. Like, you can write as you usually write. You don't need to hold the pen differently. And I guess this will be one of the most blown out for next year. And I saw a tendency for people to want to learn calligraphy, from Western calligraphy to Japanese, Chinese calligraphy. A lot of books are released with fountain pen or glass pen friendly papers. Like I have the one from Kyokodo, and they just released it like 2 weeks ago, and it's a beautiful book where you just have this text written, and with your pen or glass pen you will write over it and test different ink. And I saw people they were sold out so fast, the first release, and they are getting everywhere. And I think this kind of stay-at-home activities will get even more successful, and yeah, that's it.
All right. Any last outstanding predictions that we want to make?
Can I do just one more? So we talked about the problem with gold prices, and we talked about Sailor increasing prices. Both Pilot and Platinum, they have interesting steel nib offerings. Like the Pilot has, the Kakuno, they have the Prera, which is very good. Platinum has the Procyon, which is actually a really good pen, and the Preppies are much loved. Sailor doesn't really have anything particularly appealing under, in that price range. If you are to spend 10,000 yen on a Sailor, you get one of those black and gold, wannabe gold nib pens, or the Profit Casual. That's sort of what you have, which is not nearly as interesting as the Platinum Procyon. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sailor trying to create more interesting steel nib pen in this sort of 5,000 to 10,000 yen.
What about
range.
their Ancora build your own pen? That's for 4,000 yen, right?
Yeah, which is just Profit Junior, right? Except that you put it together yourself, which is sort of Kakuno level. Like if you want something slightly nicer, but still, like think about, say, I mean, we talk about Leonardo. Like Leonardo Momento Magico for like $200-ish, maybe even less. You have this beautiful pen, beautiful acrylic with a steel nib. Sailor doesn't really have anything that competes with that.
They have, but it's often a limited edition. They have the Le Cool that they made in collaboration with Mizutama, this little girl, the Hanko, this Hanko designer who do this little girl who has kind of a bun head, and they made this limited edition for Tohoku, Hachimonjiya. Hachimonjiya sell them, but they have this Tohoku cross Mizutama, and they released already 3 of them for each season. So there's one missing for, I guess, next year. And they have this very cute pastel color, and the nib is laser engraved, the steel nib, but it's limited to, 100, 200 pesos. It's sold out very, very fast. You can find it on Mercari, like double, triple the original price. So they start, like they have it, but they don't have in a big production.
Yeah. But the Le Cool it's been around for a while, I think, and that is very much a low-end pen. I think the standard one in the lineup. Yeah, exactly. So I was looking for something a bit above that, and a nice steel nib pen, right? Because if you look at the Pro Gear, and if you remove the nib, what you have is a pretty plain pen compared to like a Leonardo, right? Most of the appeal of a Pro Gear is actually the nib. I would argue. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sailor, especially if the gold prices continue to increase. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to create a more appealing steel nib pen.
Right, and that's all. Alesa, I don't know if you want to make a prediction.
Actually, I would like to say that I think we're going to continue seeing women driving the fountain pen world. The Inkanuma is driving the ink. It's driving it to more shimmer and driving it to the, glass pens and the chroma shading. And I think also like the sparkly pens, that's a more appealing to, I think, many women. And I think, we always looked at fountain pens as being kind of crusty old guys collecting vintage pens or whatever. And now I think we're seeing like some changes and I think people that will capitalize on that will do better. You mentioned the Ancora build your own pen. That's predominantly women in that store. So I think we're going to continue seeing women kind of driving the industry a little bit more than I think we've really acknowledged.
We can see the switch where 1 year ago we were talking about what do you do? Like a lot of people who like stationery in Japan do journaling or scrapbooking or pen paling, and they usually not use fountain pen that much. They use more like ball pen or roller pen. But more and more, I can see a switch in the a turn in the habits. Like people start to insert one fountain pen, then 2, then a glass pen, and then more inks. And we were talking we met the other day with some of our stationery friends, and some are like, oh, I would like to come to one of your pens game because I'm interested, but I don't know how to use, or I don't know how to start, and I feel a bit, I don't know which brand to buy and everything. So there is an interest, and I think they will get like more and more.
They need to tap into that. Mm-hmm. They need to tap into that more.
And that's why glass pens are so popular, because it's a no-brainer on how to use them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that, maybe I'll end it saying that we're going to see probably a further divide between glass pen users and fountain pen users.
A further divide?
Next year. Yeah, I think we're going to see a further divergence in that. But yeah, we'll see, and we'll come back in 365 days to recap and
find all our predictions being completely wrong.
Exactly.
No, completely right. I have confidence.
All right. So that's been the episode. Thank you, everybody, so much for another great year. Please continue to support us in our upcoming 2022. Hopefully we'll have some interesting things lined up. And with that said, my name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at Tokyo Station Pens, and on Twitter at TokyoStationMNH.
And my name is Jacob. I'm Foodafan on Instagram and on Twitter. I have a blog at foodafan.com.
And thanks for having me. Happy New Year to everyone. And my name is Khuê. You can find me on Instagram at MiraiCat.
And thanks for having me. I'm Alesa. I'm Inky Rocks on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.